for the first time in our 140-year history, we've had to endure 6 home defeats in a row. These, my friends, are special times indeed. Glenn, it's a bit more easy this week, isn't it? It's the better team won.
Yeah, very much so. We've had in the last sort of few games that we've played, we've had sort of large periods of the game where we just packed it in basically and just conceded goal after goal. It was, as far as we were concerned, we did reasonably okay throughout the 90 minutes. I never felt like there was a period of the game where, we were absolutely shocking. There was quite a large boring bit after Newcastle scored their third goal where we didn't do very much, but at least we didn't concede a load more goals in the middle of it. Newcastle were the better side. I could tell that just from watching the warm-ups, to be honest. When you
really?
it's interesting down the chapel end now, because you get the away team warming up in front of you, and you see how sort of like at close quarters how physically big they are, how sharp they are with the passing and the shooting drills and all that sort of stuff. And it's very, very different to what you see at the other end when you see players basically just passing the ball into the crowd instead of into the net. It's something that will never fail to annoy me for how professional footballers can't get the ball on target in a warm-up drill. That it just winds me up big time. Shane Long was the best ever for it. He was unreal. It was almost like he thought it'd be bad luck if he actually put one in the warm-up. So but
we don't waste all the good finishes, do you?
Absolutely not. But no, Newcastle were different levels, and you look at all 11 of their team, and they're a class apart and compared to ours, and that's what when you look at our starting lineup, I was looking at it and I was thinking 6 out of these 11 aren't good enough, and on any given day you might get 2 of them have a good game, 2 of them have an average game, but 2 of them are going to be bad, and you kind of know that that's not going to be enough against a team like Newcastle. I mean, go through them. I thought McCarthy had a decent game. I thought he was the best out of the kind of also rans. So he was decent. Then you had the likes of Bree, Onuachu, Aribo, who were okay, and then you had Ryan Manning and Adam Armstrong, who were not. So overall it kind of dragged us down. But Newcastle were too good, and when you've got a player like Isak who can. It's not just the goals he scores; it's the runs he makes and the way he lays the ball off. He sort of plays as
the first touch for that second goal was absolutely ridiculous.
Ridiculous. And he
that.
And he was heavily involved in the third goal as well, which was like Isak 1 touch to Gordon, 1 touch to Tonali, third man run, no one tracks him. It's just, you can't. I don't mind letting in goals like that because it's a brilliant goal, and our defenders and midfielders are not good enough to keep that sort of play out, and that's fine. We didn't give away silly goals yesterday. I mean, I'll let someone else talk about the VAR decision for the penalty. But yeah, so having gone 3-1 down, it got a bit dull until Fernandes scored, and then that got ruled out as well. And it was. I didn't feel as bad coming away from that game as I had from, some of the other ones like Brentford and Tottenham, when we just basically, might as well not have bothered turning up. At least we had a game yesterday. We did well. I think things didn't go for us as well. Refereeing decisions, not just the big ones, the sort of like general play ones. I mean, I don't think he gave us a free kick at all in that first half.
Not a single foul at all. There was 1 offside, and that was it.
Yeah, it really, and against teams like Newcastle, you need everything to kind of go your way to have a chance, and that certainly didn't happen. So no, overall, left the ground thinking they were too good for us. There you have it, really.
Steve, I'll get your thoughts on the penalty and the VAR in just a moment. George, we should just talk. I mean, we started all right, to be fair. I mean, we took the lead. It tells you all you need to know that Jan Bednarek is now our joint top scorer. But, a good goal. And for the first sort of, 20 minutes or so, we gave it a go.
Yeah, it sort of follows a similar thread, though, for all we've seen this season, and especially in the recent games under Ivan Juric. I think it's 3 of the last 5 games Saints have taken the lead and gone to lose the game. They've sort of done the first bit. They're able to now go ahead in games. It felt like that was the biggest problem previously, but keeping goals out is still a massive, massive problem. So players just don't seem to react to any setbacks. And I don't think they had another shot on goal after Newcastle went 2-1 up. I think the Kyle Walker-Peters one at half-time, just on half-time, was the first since Newcastle's second goal. And just going back to the goals Alexander Isak scored and the way he sort of helped them get the third one. I listened to Jan Bednarek's interview with Adam Blackmore, and he was sort of speaking about how Ivan Juric wants the defenders to defend, and he sort of mentioned that you can't really give a striker a yard of space in the Premier League, and perhaps the way they're trying to defend now does allow that at times. And I think if you look at the second goal and the third goal especially, that's all down to the fact that players have a bit of space. Okay, it's against Newcastle, they've got unreal players. Perhaps it's not the way they're defending. Those players are just really, really good. But I think it's something to look at in the next few games, because they can't give players spaces, and they do keep doing it, and that's why they keep conceding goals. And no matter how well they start games, you do always feel like they're going to concede at some point, and you never really back them to react well after they do that.
I think you pointed out today it was 359 minutes since we last scored a Premier League goal at St Mary's. So it felt longer. It felt longer. It really did. Steve, let's talk about the penalty. To me, that was a corner all day long. Really odd one, that.
In real time, it was weird because it just looked like the two players kind of fell against each other, kind of legs a little bit tangled. It's only when you see there's one of the replays, one of the angles where you can kind of clearly see that Aribo does kind of whack into the back of Isak's calf first, which then they then both go down together, and then Aribo gets a toe end on the ball to get it away. But it's one of those where I think if you'd given it in real time, I think there's probably fewer complaints. But then taking as long as they did to then overturn it feels like it goes against this. I mean, they've binned off the phrase clear and obvious because they were getting hoisted by their own petard with it, but they've changed it now to there's got to be a high bar for an overturn, and frankly, I'm just not convinced that meets the high bar. Some of the stuff that we've seen that hasn't been overturned this season, for and against us, just doesn't feel like it's anywhere near the sort of level that should have been required. I mean, ultimately, I've got no particular issue with it being a penalty if he'd given it, as I say, initially, if he'd been able to, if he or the linesman had spotted it. Linesman, I thought must have had a good view of it. But yeah, I mean, we'll come on to those officials again for their part later in the game. But I mean, as Glenn mentioned, a lot of it was the little decisions that didn't go our way, and Dan Burn was apparently allowed to assault Paul Onuachu for the entirety of that first half. And one such incident is what basically led directly to the second goal. It's like Onuachu's trying to hold the ball up and be the target man that we want him to be, at a time where we've literally just conceded. So that's kind of the moment that we're always most vulnerable, as we've sort of discussed a lot this season. And he's doing his best, and he's gone to hold it up, and Dan Burn basically has him in like a bear hug, and apparently that's fine. And also, it's also not. I assume it's probably too far back for them to then revisit in terms of whether VAR gets involved in that. I mean, they'll find some way to justify whichever decision they take. This is the thing. They've made everything. They want everything to be black and white, and yet they've given themselves so many different little get-outs on every single little facet of where VAR can or cannot or should or shouldn't intervene, that now they've tied themselves in knots, and there's just 5 million shades of grey. And so as a result, they can basically pick any given moment, and they'll say, well, no, he was right not to intervene because of this, and this. Whereas in reality, like, 2 years ago, you were saying, well, no, he's got to be, he shouldn't be getting himself involved in this. So yeah, I mean, it's a shambles, and I mean, I say this as someone who was very much pro VAR at the start and tried to defend it for a long time during its sort of early teething problems. But no, it's a waste of time. I mean, you saw the reaction from the fans over the Fernandez disallowment, where you've now got everyone shouting it's not football anymore. People are fed up with it, and people are gonna just say, no, I'm done with this. Can't be asked. And I mean, ordinarily you'd say, well, we're going down, so it's fine. We're not going to have to put up with it for much longer. But I know the EFL are looking at possibly bringing it in at some point. So
I feel like we all owe Wolves an apology, because they were the only team that voted against it, weren't they? And
well, yeah, but Wolves,
they did that vote again this week.
Well, but Wolves's claim was so spurious about a load of incidents that everybody looked at, and actually it's like, well, hang on, you weren't done over there. It's just their perception. It's the same with Arsenal. Arsenal fans getting their knickers in a twist because a referee sent two of their players off for second bookings. And then they produce a dossier of 500 players over the last 20 years who have done the same offence and got away with it. And it's just like, it's just so tedious. And yeah, it's just ultimately the whole thing's just not worth bothering with. It's not reduced the errors that we were promised that it would.
And the other thing about the VAR for the second goal was that took 4 minutes. Everyone knows it took 4 minutes. There were also 6 substitutions in that second half, apparently. How many minutes were added at the end? 5. How does that work? I mean, that's another thing. The amount of extra time seems to be a random guess as well. So not that I cared, because we'd lost the game, so 5 minutes was fine. But if you're going to do it properly, there probably should have been about 9, because 4 minutes was already taken up on the one VAR decision. So that didn't make a lot of sense to me either. And that's another thing that they just seems to be random. And I think Steve's hit the nail on the head there with they've given themselves so many get-outs now that it just gives rise to certain teams thinking they're just making this up as they go along. And that is kind of how it seems. Where as soon as the Aribo foul went to VAR, and they took 3 or 4 minutes, so everyone's thinking, well, it can't be that clear. But we all knew it was going to get given. I was 100% convinced it was going to get given. I don't know about anyone else. What
about you, George? Because you get a better replay than we do, I guess.
I think the one they kept showing us is the one that Steve was talking about there, where you could clearly see Yaz made contact to it. I must admit, I thought it was a penalty in the moment. Perhaps I've been blinded by the fact that they always seem to give these crazy penalties, and I should apply for a job with a PGMOL instead. But I don't know. I think it was like Glen saying as well. And when they do take a while, they're going to give it. It's almost like they don't need to go over and sell it to the monitor anymore. Once it's gone over 1 or 2 minutes, it feels like they're trying to then justify giving it. And it's the same with the Mateus Fernandez. When we saw on the monitors that it was given as offside about 1.5 minutes before they even bothered to say it. I don't know what they were checking afterwards.
But
I don't know if it was a bit of contact, but it just takes so long, and the fans were
the thing with that one. What I think they were trying to do was find an angle which showed that Cher touched it. Because if he had touched it, because it was a deliberate attempt to play the ball, that would have meant that the line drawing would have been completely redundant, because the play gets reset at that point, at that moment of contact. But I mean, the thing that I raised this on X last night was that they've looked at that the wrong way. Yeah. Because surely, having given the goal on field, they've been saying this year with the whole high bar thing, the on-field decision carries weight. That has been the catchphrase that Howard Webb has been using in that nonsense program he does with Michael Owen, and where Michael Owen basically just stands there and just nods his head and agrees with him. Mr. Personality. What a great program that is. And they've gone about it the wrong way, because the goal's been given. So what you're looking for is incontrovertible proof that that the goal shouldn't stand. So what they've got to find proof that he didn't touch it. And there's one angle on the highlights I saw. I think it was even the angle they used for the static offside line, where when the ball goes over and you see that Cher kind of goes up for it, you can see the ball deviate there. So that to me looks like proof that he's made contact, and therefore it's onside, and the goal should stand. There was certainly nothing from any of the angles that I saw where you could definitely say, no, he's gone for it, but he's completely missed it, and therefore, okay, fine, the offside can stand, and you can overrule it. So yeah, I mean, they talk about, we've got certain processes, and these processes have got to be followed, and I mean, we'll no doubt have Howard Webb explaining why it was the correct thing to do this week. But no, that's bollocks for me. Absolute nonsense.
I assume you agree, Glenn. Yeah. Final words on VAR.
Yeah, there's nothing else left to say. I try not to get too angry about it now, because it's like a game of pin the tail on a donkey, where you've got your eyes shut and someone's moving the board around all over the place, and you're just randomly. It's just complete. It's a complete shambles. Whereas you used to have to rely on a referee and the two linesmen. You used to have to rely on that, and you would trust it, and you trust it in the Championship now. And that occasionally they get it wrong, but with VAR, they are honestly making it up as they go along. They change the wording, as Steve said. They change the things that they're looking for within the same season. It's just a shambles. But I don't think there's the will to. Well, I mean, Howard Webb should basically be sacked at the end of the season, because the whole officiating and VAR, it's getting worse. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. So, usually when you've got an organisation that's failing in every major area, then there's changes at the end of the season. So to me, Howard Webb should go, but I don't think there's going to be.
There's no accountability there, is there, at all?
No, none at all. I mean, do referees still get stood down if they make? Do VAR officials get stood down if they make?
Theoretically, yeah. But I mean, part of the problem is that Webb is not long retired, so he's refereed alongside some of these guys that are still there. He'd have been refereeing when Michael Oliver first got into the Premier League for a start. Stuart Atwell, definitely. And
did you see? Just the Arsenal one. The Arsenal one the weekend. With
Michael Oliver. Yeah.
Well, I mean, 75 yards from goal, and that's given as a professional foul. It's just madness. So they make it up as they go along. It's getting worse. We've only got 15 games left of it.
15 games.
At least we can have a year off, at least, hopefully, and and go from there. But it's a shambles, and it's almost not worth analysing it now. You've almost just got to shrug your shoulders and get on with it.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about something else, if not next week, the week after, won't we? So,
yeah,
it's just that's the only thing that seems to be consistent at the moment is the inconsistencies. George, it was always going to be a big ask yesterday with Diblin out, Sunamana, no Ramsdale as well. That was sort of a last-minute thing, wasn't it? So that was going to cause a few problems yesterday, and we were up against it from the start.
Yeah, I think Saints have struggled for a settled front two. They've chopped and changed around a lot, and I thought Camaldine and Diblin sort of offer you something. And when you don't have either of them in the side, given the way that games have gone recently, you're then left with Onuachu, who seems more like someone who can make an impact off the bench rather than start. I think he sort of drops off physically when he's played 45 minutes, and Ivan Juric has talked about he needs to be physically at it to be able to compete. And I thought he sort of drops off in games. So bringing him on would have been much better. And Adam Armstrong, I'm not too sure what he does at the minute. He had those 2 chances at the start of the game. I thought he started quite all right considering the way he's played, but then I don't think he had a sniff after that. And I spoke to him in the week about his struggles, because start of the season, he's seemed like someone who might have a better fist of the Premier League this time around, coming in with the same team, bit of momentum from the Championship season. And he just looks totally off it. I think he's something ridiculous now, like over 2 months since his last Premier League goal. He doesn't put it down to confidence, although I don't think a player would ever necessarily come out and openly admit that they're short of confidence, but there's got to be something there. And I think a lot of the players are like that now, you got Sugawara looked a right start of the season. He looks totally off it. Cameron Archer looked a right start of the season. He looks like he's lost a bit. I think Mateus Fernandes, for me, is the only one who every single week you sort of get a 7 out of 10 performance out of him. You thought he was unlucky to not get the goal. He was frustrated. He thought it was a touch on the ball. And I don't see how they would be able to keep hold of him in the Championship, because he's played against that Newcastle midfield and stood out. So it's probably another player who you've got to enjoy him while you've got him.
Yeah, and I think we'd all wish him well. George, it's your first time on the pod since Ivan Juric was appointed. So I just wondered your thoughts on him so far. I mean, I'm looking at it, in black and white. He's not won a league game yet. We had round pegs in square holes. It seems to me it's now round pegs in round holes, but the pegs aren't good enough. I mean, any promising signs for you? And does he know what he's doing at least?
I think they have looked better. There's been games where they've looked like the Man United game for 75 minutes, second half, and Nottingham Forest. Even the game against Newcastle, I thought they looked all right. But like you said, when you don't win a game, it's difficult for anyone to think you've done a good job. And it does feel like an appointment that was probably made at the wrong time. They brought him in, having not paid much money for him because he was available. Maybe had to buy out his Roma contract because he was still getting paid by them. But then they haven't really backed him in the transfer window to bring in the players that he needs to play the system that he wants to play. They're using someone like James Bree at centre-back. Don't think he really fits what they need. They've not really got enough physical players up front to be able to get crosses into them, and they're sort of left trying to do things that doesn't quite work. I think there's certain elements of what he's done has been quite good. I think the fact he's very honest with the players, he's probably telling them that they are as bad as they have been in some games, which might help, but I just don't see where he's going to be able to almost win a couple of points. And it was always going to be difficult for a manager who come in at this stage in the season with a squad that wasn't good enough already to be able to turn things around. And unfortunately for him, he's not even started to do that.
Yeah, there's no signs of overcoming that 10-point deficit just yet, that's for sure. Anything else on Newcastle? I've got the tall Paul, the foul on him, which seems to sort of go unnoticed. And we were talking about Carl Walker-Peters starting at right back as well. We've been kind of making a claim for that, but it just didn't really seem to click for me yesterday with Ryan Manning. I don't know what anyone else thought.
Well, Ryan Manning can't beat a player and can't get a ball in, can he? So that kind of negates having a left footer on the left-hand side. The reason you have that there is to be able to, go on the outside and cross the ball, but he didn't do it. And so no, that didn't really work. And I thought he had a poor game. But as we've said before, Ryan Manning if he plays really well, then he's just about passable as a Premier League left back. But against a good side like Newcastle. No, sorry there, Steve. I butted in a bit there.
Yeah, the problem I think we have with our fullbacks is that they end up too far forward when they're receiving the ball. So there's no forward momentum there. They're already kind of at the forward point. They're right next to the opposition fullback. Whereas if they were receiving the ball on the run, maybe 2 or 3 yards sort of further back, then you've got a little bit of momentum and you can actually get past the opposition fullback with 1 or 2 touches, and then all of a sudden that crossing opportunity opens out. I mean, we saw from James Bree, didn't take a touch, didn't need to set himself, just whipped the cross over, and suddenly Jan Bednarek finds himself completely unmarked in the 6-yard box. So it's not that we can't do it. I mean, Manning's kind of one contribution in the game really was sort of towards the end of the first half, where he did put one really good crossover, but the keeper was able to come out and get to it relatively comfortably because Amo-Ameyaw was once again being cuddled by Dan Burn.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean we can kind of sort of lament the quality of our fullbacks till the cows come home, and yeah, they're ultimately, realistically, they're probably, most of them aren't up to scratch, but we've got to give them a little bit of a helping hand at times as well. Because yeah, I mean we pass the ball into their weaker foot, so they're already facing backwards. So where else are they going to go? They're going to pass it backwards or sideways again. We give them so few options that even if Ryan Manning could suddenly develop the ability to sprint past a fullback or a right winger, he's not being given the opportunity to do so because the pass into him is always behind him, and therefore he's only kind of looking at a sort of 90-degree angle that he can do anything with. So yeah, it's frustrating. I agree he wasn't anywhere near kind of the levels that I think we've seen reasonable levels from him based on the very low expectations. But yeah, he wasn't up there yesterday.
There's a discussion to be had around fullbacks and who starts when we get into the Ipswich preview in just a moment. So I will get all your thoughts on that. TSP Player of the Week. It was Leslie Ukachukwu last week. I think maybe first time, second time this season. So thank you for all the votes on that. George, it was lots of 4s and 5s in your your scores for the players. Is there anybody that stood out for you who got the most?
Yeah, I think I've already mentioned him, Mateus Fernandez.
Yeah,
he was good. Unlucky to like I said, unlucky with that goal being offside and won the ball back a lot of times. I think it was his cross that from the corner, which Harwood-Bellis had, that acrobatic one, could have gone in, maybe turned the game around a little bit. I've said before about him, he's a brilliant player. I think he's someone who, when he arrived, no one knew anything about him, and now we know a lot about him, and we probably won't see him for much longer, I feel like.
Yeah. Is that fair, lads? Anyone else we're going to put on the list? Bednarek, maybe for the goal. Two goals, 2 games.
Yeah, McCarthy maybe. Couldn't do anything about the goals and pulled off a couple of decent saves. There was one brilliant save from Joe Linton in the first half, which he tipped onto the post, which actually won't go down in the stats as a save because the flag went up correctly. But yeah, that was a brilliant save down to his weaker side.
Well, stick McCarthy on there then. Glenn, happy with that?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Fraser. No, I'm joking.
What
was that about? I mean, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm going off. So I generally agree with George about Uric in that there's been an improvement, but it is bizarre. We still haven't got a point, and we're saying there's an improvement. But he's still doing some weird things with substitutes. I mean, so he brought on Ryan Fraser and put Sugawara as a centre back. Where, my word, you don't want to do that. Now I know we all talk about him, but Bella Kochap was right there. Give him 10 minutes. You know, get him on the pitch. See if he can last 10 minutes. That was a bizarre one. I mean, where has Ryan Fraser come from? And he didn't go and stand next to Paul Onuachu, which is a shame because I would have liked to have seen that. But so. I mean, the only other, I thought Carl Walker-Peters had a decent game. Right back, I thought he did his job pretty well, but slim pickings really after Fernandez and McCarthy.